Welcome to Uncovered. It's Wednesday. I'm Anthony Davis. He's Ron Filipkowski. Together we uncover the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream and corporate media. Ron, we have a lot to discuss as we know Trump gives us more material than we know what to do with. Maybe we should start with the perfect phone call between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. Now, I have said on the show last week, and I've very much of the opinion that I don't think Trump has spoken to Putin at all. Even, just after the election, I think he alluded to the fact that he'd spoken to Putin. I didn't actually believe that. So I think that there has been this holdout from Putin strategically, just to kind of watch this whole ceasefire discussion with Zelensky and everything else play out. And that has worked to Putin's advantage. He even kept Trump waiting for an hour when it came to actually getting him on the phone yesterday. Tell us what happened.
What's interesting is that's the part that seems to upset Trump and MAGA the most is the keeping the stories about him being kept waiting. And, I documented how that happened. Trump originally said the call was going to be at 9. Then he changed that. He said the call is going to be sometime between 9 and 11. Well, the president of the United States can't set a time for a phone call. No, he can't, because Putin was giving a speech at that time before some group in Russia that he speaks to all the time at 6 p.m. Russian time, Moscow time. And, of course, Putin could have postponed that speech, canceled that speech, scheduled around it. But no, or just said, I'll call you at 11 o'clock when I'm done with this conference. But instead, Putin told him, I'm not doing this thing at 9. When I get done, I'll call you. So, and probably how long do you typically speak at this thing? He said, well, I usually in there about 2 hours, but I'll cut it short. So here you have a situation where Trump is sitting there waiting, and I watched Putin's appearance, and he was asked about it. He's like, aren't you supposed to be speaking to Trump right now? And Putin just laughed. He's like, I'll get to him when I get to him. He'll wait. So that is what happened. I mean, he intentionally did that.
Of course. He's the expert at playing mind games, isn't he? And he is a former KGB agent after all. And then this seems like the simplest. This is KGB textbook page 1. Of
course, Negotiation 101. Trump, the art of the deal, doesn't know anything. But so that's the first thing, which of course Caroline Levitt angrily denied today that was the case. But I mean, we know it's the case. We watched it play out in real time. We watched Putin. But they're counting on the fact that 99% of people are completely ignorant about all that. So, which is fine. But, more importantly, the actual call itself. And of course, we don't know exactly what was said. We have to rely on the readouts that are put out by the staff about what transpired. And we don't have a transcript. We just have a summary. And what was interesting is I read the summary from the Kremlin and I read the summary from Trump. And they didn't match up at all. It was like they're two different conversations. There was some things that matched up, but there was a lot that didn't. And most of what didn't match up was Trump claiming that Putin had agreed to certain things, which was not in Putin's readout. And the odd thing about it is, like, for the first time ever, reading these readouts from Moscow, I actually believe their version more than I believe our government's version of what happened. I think their version was probably more accurate, to be honest with you. And the thing that was most disgusting to me is this: is it in both of their readouts? This is this is consistent. Two things: the two places that Ukraine is kicking Russia's ass right now. Two things. One is Ukraine has developed a lethal drone that they are manufacturing themselves. They are not getting it from the EU. They're not getting it from the United States. And these drones are wreaking havoc right now on Russia's energy infrastructure. Their oil refineries, their power plants, they're absolutely driving them nuts. And the Russians can't stop it. So that's number one. And number two, the Black Sea fleet has been decimated. Ukraine doesn't have any ships in the Black Sea. It's the Russian Navy, and the Russian Navy has had many, many ships sunk in the Black Sea. So the two things that both the United States and Russia have said that they they want as part of this ceasefire agreement is that no more attacks on energy infrastructure and no more attacks on naval forces in the Black Sea, which is the two things that Ukraine is hurting Russia with the most, is what they want to make conditions of the ceasefire.
Interestingly, Putin's conditions haven't really changed in 2 years.
No.
And this is why it's like Trump's trying to position it like, oh, you know, I've done this and it's like, no, I mean, Putin is holding out for what he wants. Especially, he wants these territories that have been annexed already to be designated as Russian territory. And he wants that to, you know, in the same way that Trump wants the Gulf of America or Greenland or Panama, it's Putin who's holding out for these specific regions. Crimea.
I mean, it's even worse. It seems like he keeps adding new things.
Right.
I mean, he, no NATO, of course. He's always wanted that.
Yeah.
But now he's adding like all U.S. aid to Ukraine must be cut off.
Yeah.
No weapons supplies, no U.S. troops in there, obviously.
Yeah.
He hasn't mentioned whether he wants European aid to be cut off as part of this deal. I didn't see that. I looked for that in the readouts because he wants no more U.S. aid to Ukraine.
Right.
I get that. But
so does
whether
Trump.
he also wants to make it no European aid to Ukraine, I don't know if that's.
Well, that's never going to happen. But the thing is, and what we have to remind our viewers of, is that Trump is firmly on the side of Vladimir Putin. He's never said a bad word against him. And everything that Trump has done since getting elected has been straight out of Russia's kind of hit list of things that they would prefer, including stopping intelligence sharing and stopping having the International Criminal Court investigating Vladimir Putin and all of this stuff. I've actually made a really interesting video about this, which I'm putting out later.
The team that was tracking kidnapped Ukrainian children.
That's right. Which is the saddest one of them all, to be honest, because if the abject cruelty of somebody, especially leading the free Western world, as it was formerly known, to say, no, we're just going to let that one go, the kidnapping of Ukrainian children where they get taken to Russia.
Which is allegedly 45,000 children.
I know.
Yeah.
I've made a specific video about this, which is going out later on the Midas Touch Network and on 5 Minute News. So you might be interested to check that out. I have a clip actually of Trump though from yesterday. This is him kind of lying about the Ukrainian army in Kursk or something. Let's take a look at him. I've got a new name for Trump, by the way. I'm calling him Blob d'Orange. Blob d'Orange. Let's take a look at him.
L'Orange with an L.
L'Orange. It's a play on duck à l'orange.
Okay, all right.
We'll see. Anyway, here he is.
Tomorrow I'm speaking with President Putin of Russia to save some soldiers who are in deep trouble. They're captured. Essentially, they're surrounded by Russian soldiers. So I give you a lot of different things in one news conference, but it's a big deal. They're surrounded by Russian soldiers, and I believe if it wasn't for me, they wouldn't be here any longer. I was able to get them not to do anything at this moment, but it's a bad situation in Russia, and it's a bad situation in Ukraine. What's happening in Ukraine is not good, but we're going to see if we can work a peace agreement, a ceasefire and peace, and I think we'll be able to do it. I'm speaking to President Putin tomorrow morning, yes.
Yeah. He's always looking for parity, isn't he? He's always trying to, put equal blame, find people on both sides.
That was one of the most disgusting things he's ever said about the situation in Ukraine. He said that 2 days ago, and I was fuming. To be honest with you, I was really, really upset for a few hours after watching that clip because the media just simply ignored it. And I did everything I could to get them to cover it. I have thousands of reporters all over the world who follow me on social media, begged them to do stories about this because it's an abject lie. Everything he said in there was fiction. It was all Putin, Russian propaganda. There has been heavy fighting in Kursk over the last 2 weeks. There is no Ukrainian army surrounded. They were in a tight spot there about a week ago, but they have extricated all of their people. But, and there's other parts of the front where they are making gains on Russia. But the point, it goes back and forth. But Russia claimed that they had a Ukrainian army surrounded, right? So what does Trump do? He comes out here right before his phone call with Putin and says, the Russians have thousands of Ukrainian soldiers surrounded right now, and they would all be dead if it wasn't for me. That's what he said. I think the only reason why they're still alive, no, not because of the bravery of the soldiers on the battlefield who are fighting tooth and nail these Russians and North Koreans and other mercenaries, not due to their bravery. He's saying because of me, like he's implying that he made a call to Russia or something. Because of me, Putin is not killing these Ukrainians. Like Putin really, if he could wipe out this Ukrainian army, he wouldn't do it because Trump asked him not to. That's what Trump is saying here. And he's saying when I talk to Putin tomorrow, I'll talk to him and I'll save these Ukrainians. It's all a lie. It was all fiction. Zelensky, immediately after that clip came out, Zelensky issued a statement saying, we have no units surrounded. This is not correct. So is Zelensky once again supposed to thank him? Next time he comes to the White House, is Vance going to demand that he thank him for Trump saving his surrounded soldiers? I mean, this is just a disgusting display. Number one, it's disgusting what Trump said, but it's equally disgusting that our media ignored this story and just was like, that's usual Trump. Who cares?
This also, to me, is connected to how the media fails to understand the relationship between Putin and Trump. They always go down the road of, there must be compromat, whether it be the PP tape or something. But they totally fail to understand how Trump has put Putin on this pedestal and really sees him as this kind of, he looks up to him. He wants to have that, rule with that iron fist like Putin. But it's the fact that Putin doesn't shop Trump every time Trump lies like this about strategy. Because Putin's keeping his mouth shut and just letting this play out. But if every time Putin came out and was like, actually, no, that didn't happen, or Trump's just being an idiot and lying, but he isn't. He's keeping quiet. And I think that's the compromat. It's that power play between the two of them, that Trump needs Putin to kind of not sell him out. And Putin needs Trump because he's getting control of the kind of Western hemisphere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Trump, Putin, it's not just Putin, it's the Kremlin is feeding Team Trump these talking points. And it's like Trump is Putin's press secretary.
Right.
And this is all because I think the end game here is, and we'll talk about the Trump-Zelensky call in a minute that happened this morning.
Yeah.
But I think the end game here is to make these demands so onerous and to try and if Zelensky ultimately says no, and he has to say no to most of these demands, there are some things he can agree to, but I think there's some things there's no way he can agree. His country won't let him agree, that his people won't let him agree. But I think that the plan here is to blame this falling apart on Zelensky. That the Trump administration, when this falls apart, and I think it will, he is not going to blame, of course, Putin or Russia for making unreasonable demands. Yeah. He's not going to blame himself for making unreasonable demands. No. He's got a whole list of demands. He's going to blame the victim, as he always does. He's going to blame Zelensky.
Well, he's also blown up the Gaza ceasefire as well. So, I mean, this is what he does. He just
we're fighting in Yemen. We're fighting in Gaza.
Yemen
but
as
he's
well.
the peace guy who's going to end all the wars, right?
Yeah. No wars. No wars. Okay, well, let's talk about the Zelensky call, because after the Putin call, Zelensky made a statement and said, I just want to know what they talked about. Like, I need to be part of this. So then he has a call with Zelensky. How did that play out?
I saw the readout from the White House that came out about an hour and a half ago, and I was shocked. I was shocked because Here's the problem. The problem is, and Zelensky has said almost nothing because he's in a position now. Trump and Vance let him know that they don't ever want him out there criticizing them, and if they do, they already sent that clear signal. If you publicly criticize us for what we're doing to you, we will pull all intelligence, we'll pull all aid. So don't you dare do it. That's what that White House meeting was all about.
Yeah.
It was about warning Zelensky, don't criticize us ever while we're trying to screw you.
Yeah.
Just take it and say thank you.
Yeah.
And what shocked me about this readout is when you're brokering a peace deal, like for example, Jimmy Carter did between Egypt and Israel in 1979. You're not, as the broker, you're supposed to be the middleman. You're not supposed to be in there like making demands for yourself. Jimmy Carter wasn't asking for like a piece of the Suez Canal. It was like, we're the honest broker, meaning like we're not taking sides. We're trying to mediate. But the problem is, what Trump is asking for is in some ways more onerous than what Putin is asking for. So you take all of Putin's demands, that all of the stuff that Putin wants from Ukraine, and then you add to that all the things that Trump wants them to give him and to give the United States, and you add those two things together and you see that this can't happen. It's just ridiculous, because what we know that Trump has already been asking him to do, and what Zelensky seems like he's finally willing to do, although he doesn't want to, is give up 50% of their mineral rights, right? So we already know that, and we already know that Zelensky, under certain circumstances and caveats, was willing to sign that kind of a deal in order to, quote unquote, pay us back for aid that we
And that's going to screw Ukraine's economy going forward.
It's going to screw their economy, right? Yeah. But it's not just that, because today Trump wants something new today. What he wants, and it's right in the White House readout in black and white, is Trump now wants, in addition to the 50% mineral rights, Ukraine to hand over all of their power plants, nuclear power plants, conventional power plants, coal power, gas, everything. All power plants will be in Ukraine, will be owned and operated by the United States of America.
This is
That's
just
his
pure
new.
corruption.
So, I mean, if you're Zelensky, okay, we're going to agree to what?
Yeah.
This
is Trump working for Russia, and basically, because I'm of the opinion that the moment that this ceasefire is agreed, if it ever is agreed, that Putin will renege on it, as he always does, and will just then seek to reattack Ukraine with a different plan and take the territory that he doesn't already have. He's not to be trusted.
And, the thing is, the Trump and MAGA were all like, no U.S. personnel will go into Ukraine. When every time Biden even suggested that we might send not U.S. troops, but we might send on, whatever, people in there, civilians, intelligence officers, whatever, MAGA and Trump went crazy.
Yeah.
This is escalating the war. Now we're talking about owning and operating their power plants, because what we said is U.S. personnel are going to go into Ukraine and run their power plants after we own them. And it's like, how is that not a complete escalation of U.S. involvement in Ukraine, which is the opposite of what Trump said he was going to do? He said he was going to bring peace, and we were going to be out of there.
It's an occupation. That's what it is.
We're occupying Ukraine.
Right. It becomes that Ukraine is not just at war with Russia. It then is effectively in some kind of weird trade war with the US, where we occupy their power stations and steal half their minerals. I mean, this is going to be the thing that splits the US from Europe. I guarantee the Europeans are going to be like, okay, we cannot play these games, and I keep saying they're going to have to push the US out of NATO if the US doesn't withdraw itself from NATO first.
The EU president in the last few days, and all the other European country leaders, Macron, Germany, all over, has said that they are not buying US weapons systems anymore. They are canceling existing contracts. they are going to buy weapons from other countries, and they have always bought the bulk of their weapons from us.
Yes.
And, I just saw a tweet today from Lockheed Martin, which makes the F-35, who has had contracts being canceled by European countries, who had contracts for F-35s. Canada just canceled their contract for F-35s that they were buying from the United States. Canada just canceled that contract. So Lockheed Martin is out there, trying to reassure the allies, like, don't worry. And it's like, hey, what they're saying back is like, after we buy these jets, how do we know that we're going to be able to get spare parts from you? How do we know we're going to get software updates from you? How do we know you're not going to jam things in our jets if you don't like what we're doing with them? Yeah. So they can't trust the United States. This is going to cost billions and billions of dollars in many high-paying U.S. jobs in the defense contracting industry. It's literally like one of the best industries the United States has is weapons. As sad as that is, but it's weapons.
It's the same as in the UK, Ron. BAE Systems is our biggest company.
And we're out of business.
That's right.
Because of Donald. We went from the biggest arms supplier in the world, and now we're out of business.
And then you couple that with Boeing, who also make military equipment, but also they make commercial aircraft. They're falling apart as well, thanks to the mismanagement and greed. And so really these huge industries, these great American companies will, thanks to Donald Trump, will be no more.
That's right. And, whether you like defense, whether you like weapons manufacturing, and I get that a lot of people don't like the, military industrial complex, but the bottom line is there's tens of thousands of high-paying American jobs in those industries that are going to be wiped out because, just buying our own military, buying them is just simply not enough to sustain them. So they are going to be closing plants, firing workers, laying people off, all because of one person, Donald Trump.
France is currently preparing a booklet that it's going to send to all its citizens on how to survive an oncoming war. Yeah. That's what they're thinking. That's they're planning ahead. I heard Trump complain that Canada is the worst people to deal with. They're horrible. They were horrible to me. I mean, we're really talking about one guy who knows nothing about anything, taking everything personally and causing the world to collapse. And really, this does say a lot about how dangerous it is to have one man who really can't be touched. I wrote in a post that there's no line manager. You can't complain to your line manager about this guy because there is literally nobody above Trump. And that is problematic, as we're discovering from a geopolitical perspective, from an economic perspective, but just also, we wonder about how these dictators rise, and a lot of it is down to their insecurity and their compromised mental health, because people who have their faculties would never allow things to get as crazy as this.
Yeah. And to think, how is this going to play out? I think I can't imagine them ever coming to an agreement that Zelensky can sign. And the other thing, John Bolton made this point, and I hesitate to quote John Bolton, but I will, who was Trump's former national security advisor.
This is how bad things have got that we're having to quote John Bolton. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What were we just talking about?
Sorry for throwing you off your track.
Yeah. What was Bolton
about the agreement?
Yeah. It's an impossible situation that Zelensky is never going to agree to, never going to sign.
Yeah.
And I think that they're just trying to drag out these negotiations. I think from Zelensky's perspective, he's got to drag this out long enough for Europe, and Europe is frantically ramping up what they're doing to try and help Ukraine. Because I think if he can drag this out long, because at some point Trump is going to blame Zelensky when this falls apart. He's going to blame Zelensky.
Yeah.
And I think that Zelensky wants to have Europe ready to step into the vacuum when we eventually walk away from Ukraine. I think that's what's going to happen. I think Zelensky's going to drag this out as long as possible. And I think Putin is too. And Trump is going to get frustrated. And then eventually Trump's going to blame Zelensky. And hopefully that we're now 3-4 months down the line, and Europe will be ready to step in and pick
this
up.
This is going to be the thing that causes the transatlantic alliance to fall apart, sadly. And it shouldn't really be this way.
And it's a long-term thing, because once Europe starts manufacturing and building more plants and starts manufacturing more jets and more tanks and more planes, they're not, let's say a Democrat wins the presidency in 4 years or something, they're not going to just say, oh, great, we're all coming back now. No, because they've now built up their own production. And they're never coming back.
They can't trust America.
We've
anymore.
had these people for 80 years buying our stuff, and now they're not going to buy it anymore going forward, because let's say a Democrat does win. Well, 4 years later, Vance could be back in there. So they simply cannot trust the United States anymore, and I don't blame them.
I watched a YouTube documentary a couple of days ago about an American guy who went to Kyiv. And it was only filmed a week or so ago, so it's very recent, and I really recommend it. I can't remember what it's called, but I'll look it up in the break. And I watched for an hour and a half of this guy with a guide in Ukraine, showing this city. Now, we imagine from what we see in news clips of just the whole city decimated and bombed, and there being nothing left, just piles of rubble. And I actually think that's what Trump sees, because, he kept referring during the Oval Office meeting, your country is decimated. There's nothing left. Kyiv is thriving, as in it really is a beautiful European city with incredible history and monuments and cafe culture. And people are so stalwart in their ability to keep living, despite the fact that there are Russian missiles going overhead. And I think that it's important that our viewers remember that we're talking about a sovereign nation that has the most remarkable resolve. And I encourage people just to go on YouTube and to watch recent footage of how the city, how people are living in Ukraine, especially in the capital city too.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Caroline Levitt, because her response to some of these questions has been interesting. She was asked about the administration deciding to withdraw from the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine. Let's take a look at her response to that question.
Sure.
Thanks. There have been some media reports just in the last few hours that the administration has decided to withdraw from the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine, which is designed to hold Putin accountable for war crimes. Are you able to confirm that? And if that has occurred, why has that occurred?
I'm not able to confirm it because I have not heard that. I will caution, I know there have been many inaccurate and misleading reports from Reuters lately, so I would caution anybody taking that seriously, but I can check in and get back to you.
Yeah, so you just blame the news agency. I know you have a lot to say about her, so I'll let you take the floor.
I mean, I used to teach high school, history for 3 years. And that just reminds me of a student in class who didn't read the assignment, who didn't know the, and it's like that every single day. She literally does not know the answer to anything. She's totally unprepared. She does no homework. She does no prep. She walks in there. How do you, that was in the news. I watch these press conferences and they ask her about things that are happening around the world and in the administration and in courts. And literally 90% of the time, she has no idea. She just doesn't know, or the things she says are just absolutely false.
Yeah.
And like her, or insulting. And her reflex when she gets the question that she has no idea what the answer to it is to attack the news agency, which is what Trump does. Who are you with? Oh, they all Reuters is Reuters is one of the most reliable, accurate news agencies on the planet. there are very few that are more reliable than Reuters. And I'd be careful about anything Reuters says. Reuters reported the story accurately. It actually happened. So if you're going to, so she can't even deny it because she says she doesn't know anything about it. And, we talked about this before, like Kayleigh McEnany, for all her faults, she spent, and I remember watching her in interviews talk about the job as press secretary, and she was highly educated. She went to Harvard Law School. Kayleigh, she's intelligent, and she lied a lot, but she wasn't dumb. But she worked her ass off, and I believe she did. She said that she spent 9-10 hours a day, and how it's true is because she would walk in with that big ass binder of color coded tabs, and every single question that they asked her, like 99% of the time, she went right to the tab.
But that's the job. That's the job of the press secretary.
That's what the job is.
Right.
And Levitt doesn't know anything.
But this whole administration doesn't want to do any work. They just want to throw as much shit at the wall and see what sticks. And I find that, as you say, she parrots things that Trump says. She also says one-liners that are kind of, like Republican talking points, which are completely offensive. I'm going to play the one now about the speaking German. And if you're offended by this, I can only apologize, but here it is.
So is President Trump going to send the Statue of Liberty back to France?
Absolutely not. And my advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be to remind them that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now. So they should be very grateful to our great country. Kelly.
Yeah. It's just it's embarrassing on so many levels. First of all, the question itself. I read the story because I follow thousands of reporters from all over the world, lots of reporters in Europe, and they follow me. And so I saw this story about this, MP in France who he wasn't even serious. It was a joke where he was saying, if you don't respect us, send us the Statue of Liberty back because you don't really stand for those values anymore. I mean, it's not a serious thing. It was like, whatever. I didn't even include it in my column because it's just like, it's the kind of clickbait nonsense. It's bullshit, right? It's not news. And so here you have Pete Ducey from Fox News, who, the largest, most watched cable news in America. He's their White House correspondent. And he asks this dumbass question, are we going to return the Statue of Liberty? I mean, really? This is what you're asking when you get a chance to ask? With all the shit that's going on in the world and on the country, you're going to ask this tomfoolery nonsense? And then what does she do? She insults Europe. I mean, in the D-Day invasion, the Canadians, the Australians, the French, the Poles, they were all right beside our troops dying on the beach. Yeah. All throughout, the lack of knowledge of history about the fact that, yes, the United States played a very major role, but the United States didn't even get into the war until 2 years in. That's right. After we were attacked. UK was fighting the war on their own for 2 years. Okay. And so, you don't know history, you get a dumbass question, and then you insult all of our allies and their veterans and their families who died and bled to liberate Europe yet again. Yeah.
And she was
For
laughing.
What reason?
She was laughing throughout, like it's a joke, like it's funny. This is the lack of seriousness about this. I mean, Hitler killed 12 million people in total during that war. Yeah. There's absolutely no empathy.
And of course, let's not forget one of the big reasons why we are a country is because France came and helped us. or we might be saluting King Charles.
Well, she needs to go and see Hamilton on Broadway as a very, just as a start to her education.
As a start.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's so frustrating.
Read about the Battle of Yorktown and you'll figure out that only happened because the French fleet, prevented the British from being able to extricate Cornwallis.
Yeah. I don't know. She's not just insulting the French, she's insulting all Europeans.
Everybody. Yes. Yep.
It's nuts. I mean, look, I remember, when I first came to the US and I actually heard Kevin McCarthy making a reference like this as well. If it wasn't for us, you'd be speaking German or something like that. And I did some research as to how American schools teach the Second World War. And there really is a very different storyline and narrative.
Yeah, I'm sure.
To what we get in Europe.
I'm sure.
And
Japanese
so it does start
don't even
there.
Mention Pearl Harbor.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm sure.
Right.
If you talk to a Japanese student, I went to college with a lot of Japanese students.
Yeah.
Like they are not taught anything about Pearl Harbor. They're told that the war started because of U.S. oil embargo, which was a big part of it. But they don't even mention Pearl Harbor. So sure, every country does that. Yeah.
Has a different version. So I'm making sure that my children who are in are in public school, make sure they're getting the European version of their education. In the car with daddy after school. Right? What are we learning today, kids? Okay, let's talk about Elon Musk for a moment, because is it me, or is he in detention right now? I feel like I'm not hearing as much DOGE action. I feel like, the legal position, the challenge that we heard yesterday where, DOGE has been, or certainly USAID has been told to rehire, all the people that they fired, or certainly give them email access in the short term. I mean, is it my imagination, or has he had to take a little bit of a back seat in this storyline?
Yeah, that's a good question, because there's two parts to what's going on with Musk right now. One is his Tesla and his business empire unraveling, and then the other is the DOGE stuff. I think that when he came in, Republicans in Congress love to talk about cutting the deficit, love to talk about cutting spending, and never actually do it. At least going back to maybe like 1950. And so, they don't actually ever do it, although they like to talk about it a lot, because, a lot of these cuts affect their districts and affect voters in their districts, of course. So I think the concept of DOGE appealed to them, because here it's like, we don't have to make the tough decisions. We don't have to make the cut. It's going to be Elon Musk is going to do it.
Right.
DOGE is going to cut all this government waste, fraud, and abuse. And it's going to keep us from having to do it. Like Mike Johnson talks about all the time. Well, we would love to, but we couldn't find it. We couldn't find the fraud.
Yeah, but the algorithm.
Right?
Yeah.
But what a lot of Republican reps say off the record to reporters is, look, we like DOGE doing it, so we don't have to. They don't have to face their voters. They can just say, oh, it was Musk. It wasn't us. It was Musk. It was Trump. And so I think that the original concept of it really appealed to them, but I don't think that they expected him to come in as heavy-handed and bull in a china shop as he did, and just take a wrecking ball to everything, to Voice of America, Social Security Administration, USAID. I think many of them did not expect that level of ruthlessness on the part of and trying to get everybody's data and all of that. And so then they have this huge backlash. So I think what a lot of them are basically at the point of like, now we're taking a lot of heat and abuse because of Musk. Musk is causing this pain for us. So it went from like they loved him to now it's like all the reporting is back channel. They're back channeling the White House. There's a flood of complaints from Republicans in Congress to Trump world about Musk. And sure, I think that even though, Trump tries to play it off and act like everything's cool between them, it seems pretty clear that, they've reined him in quite a bit.
And if you go on the DOGE website and you actually look at the things that they've listed, there is no waste, fraud, and abuse. It's purely political and ideological, the stuff that they're cutting. It's stuff that is essential public services that as Republicans, conservatives, MAGA Republicans, fascists, they just don't agree with. Yeah. And that if they only came out and said that, it might have a little more transparency. But the fact that they're trying to designate it as fraud and abuse is so unfair, especially to the federal workers who are losing their jobs.
If you thought that all this stuff was wrong, they could have put that in the CR.
Yeah.
And there were many Republicans who wanted to do that, who said, well, we don't know how these court cases are going to play out. So we're better off taking all these DOGE cuts and bundling them up and putting them as part of the CR. But no, they didn't do that because it never would have passed, because they had a whole bunch of moderate Republicans who wanted no part of voting on a CR with these DOGE cuts in it. So they could have done it if they really stood by these Musk DOGE cuts.
Yeah.
They could have easily put them in the CR, but they chose not to because they knew that they would get backlash from their voters. But that's how the United States is supposed to work.
But it's
supposed
cowardly.
to be our representatives that are vote on spending.
It exposes their cowardice. It exposes the fact that this is the process is corrupt in itself. Just the nature of having it done by an unelected individual who supposedly is running it, except he's not running it. That belongs to someone else. Oh no, she's running HHS. I mean, the whole thing's a mess. I mean, is it any wonder that Donald Trump has gone bankrupt so many times and his companies are such a disaster? Is that he literally, everything he touches turns to shit. And this is a perfect example of that. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this on the show last time, but in the UK, they just announced they're getting rid of NHS England, which is a kind of bureaucratic layer of the National Health Service between the doctors and the government. And, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, and they announced that they're going to get rid of it because it's unnecessary cost. And they've said it's going to take 2 years to wind it down. Yeah. That is how you get rid of a department, a public department.
Doors.
You wind it down slowly. You make sure that people have got other jobs to go to, right, or the public workforce is taken care of. You do not just shutter it and then send the press to take pictures of someone on a ladder taking the letters off the building as a kind of, as a photo op. That is how Trump and Musk are doing this. Absolutely no idea about how delicate the federal government is.
2 days ago, the police forcibly remove employees from the U.S. Peace Institute.
That's right. They broke in.
Which is a nonprofit created by Congress.
DOGE broke in.
They broke in and they had the police there to remove the people who were refusing to go. They said, we're an independent nonprofit. We're not in a government building.
Yep.
We were created by Congress. You have no authority over us. And they got the police to escort them out of the building.
Because it's a coup, Ron. It's a coup. That's what
coup.
This is.
Yeah, judicial coup. So that's their new buzzword, judicial coup.
Judicial coup,
right.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a little while. Let's just show this clip of Elon Musk. Does he genuinely not understand why Tesla dealerships are being vandalized? I mean, he or is he just an idiot? I mean, we know he's an idiot, but let's take a look at the clip and then we can discuss.
Yeah, I mean, it's really come as quite a shock to me that there's this level of really hatred and violence from the left. I always thought the left, or Democrats, were supposed to be the party of empathy, the party of caring, and yet they're burning down cars, they're firebombing dealerships, they're firing bullets into dealerships, they're just smashing up Teslas. Tesla is a peaceful company. We've never done anything harmful. I've never done anything harmful. I've only done productive things. So I think we just have a deranged. There's some kind of mental illness thing going on here, because this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
and I think there are larger forces at work as well. I mean, I don't know who's funding it and who's coordinating it, because this is crazy. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, it must be George Soros is paying everyone to go and do this. Nothing to do with the fact that tens of thousands of federal workers are being fired, and they find out via email, and then they have to admit, tell me 5 things that you did today, and send that email back before the end of the day, or you're fired. None of that stuff. Nothing to do with it.
Yeah. And first of all, this is not the left. I mean,
No.
the number of attacks are very small instances of vandalism around the world to Tesla. You know, I'm actually surprised there isn't more. I mean, I'm not encouraging it because I actually don't like it. I'll tell you why I don't like it, because, you know, Tesla is not going under because of this, but this gives him an excuse. This and the whole narrative right now coming out of Trump, Musk, and Fox News and all that is that Tesla's stock is tanking and Tesla's having all these problems because of these acts of terrorism, domestic terrorism by Democrats.
Yeah.
So they're blaming what is happening with Tesla on violence from Democrats,
Which doesn't make sense to any critical thought. It doesn't make sense.
It's not why Tesla's in trouble.
No.
Tesla's in trouble because of Elon Musk and his behavior and his conduct and but this has given him an excuse or something to gaslight people with, to say this is what's happening. This is why my company is struggling, because of these attacks of vandalism. And that's why I'm kind of like a little bit annoyed by the fact that these acts are happening, although they're random one-off people. There's no group or organization coordinating this stuff. But, you know, it gives Musk an excuse to cover up and mask the reality. The reality is this: his brand is toast in Europe. It is annihilated. He has a huge Tesla factory in Germany. No one in Germany will buy Teslas. A new survey of over 100,000 Germans, a new poll, not a poll with like where they polled 100 people like they do here. They polled over 100,000 Germans last week, and 94% of them said they will never buy a Tesla again. Sales of Tesla are down over 70% in Germany this year and across Europe. In China, which is his biggest market outside of the US, his sales are toast. He can't sell his cars in China anymore. Why? Because the Chinese are manufacturing just as the same car or a better car for half the price, and the Chinese are buying their own domestic cars, and they've stopped buying Tesla. So his sales are tanking. His sales are tanking in the United States. Why? Because most of the people who bought Teslas were Democrats, and he's declared war on Democrats. It's the old Michael Jordan adage. Why, you know, they said, why won't you be more active in politics? He said Republicans buy shoes too. You know, Musk, that's a golden rule. And Musk has broken that golden rule. If you want to sell products, you don't become a far right politician or far left, you know, Marxist politician. It's hard to sell products if that's what if you're going to go to one extreme.
He tried to get the Nazi Party elected in Germany. I mean,
and he's still trying to sell cars in Germany.
Still trying to sell cars in Germany. He's doing the Hitler salute.
Random acts of vandalism when that's not the reason why his stock is tanking. It's not it. You know, here's the other thing: 4 major shareholders and officers, the CEO of Tesla, Kimball Musk, Elon's brother, Murdoch, not Lachlan, not the evil one, the other brother who's
James.
like semi-normal, James Murdoch, all sold off like over $100 million in shares of Tesla in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, what does that tell you when officers of the corporation and some of the largest shareholders are dumping stock because they know this company is going down, and that company funds everything else that Musk does.
But it's also extremely over-leveraged. That's the other thing.
Overvalued, absolutely,
overvalued,
and over-leveraged, both.
Yeah. I mean, ironically,
if you compare their income and their assets to like Toyota,
yes,
you know, Tesla's like 8 times more overvalued their stock price than Toyota, which makes no sense because Toyota's been around for forever.
Yeah.
Is the gold standard as far as like
it's the culture as well. You know, the Japanese are they believe in moderation, and you know, Elon is one of these overcooking everything. Yeah. I did read today though that they tried to refinance Twitter or X, and that they claim it's now worth $44 billion again, which is what he paid for it, because they were pulling a few billion out. Do you believe that?
No, I saw he raised another $1 billion in capital. I don't know where it came from, but he was only able to buy Twitter because of the Saudis.
That's right.
This I think the Saudis put up 20 billion of the 44. So, that's why I said his largest business partners are, for Tesla, the Chinese Communist Party, and for Twitter, the Saudi royal family. Those are his two biggest business partners. And his third biggest business partner is the United States government. So that's Elon Musk's business empire.
Yeah. Well, it's, the old phrase, don't mix business and pleasure. This is don't mix business and politics. And
it's not smart.
It's not smart.
It's not smart for any corporation.
Yeah.
To do that, to wade into politics.
But it should be illegal anyway. I mean, what about the Hatch Act and the Logan Act and all of these things that we've kind of, gotten used to try and prevent insider trading and prevent any of this, dealing?
One thing we got to watch is this broadband deal with Starlink.
Right.
The rural broadband was part of the infrastructure bill.
That's right.
Biden. And this stuff is all being installed all over the country. And I read a story where this hasn't happened yet, but where they're saying that what Musk wants to do is have all those contracts canceled, and the rural broadband all over the United. It's something like a $30 billion contract, a massive contract.
Yeah.
And he wants Starlink to replace all that. So because it's not just the money part of it. I mean, not just the massive windfall of government money that he would benefit from, but it's the fact that he will now control the internet access for tens of millions of Americans. He will personally be able to control that.
The irony of a lot of this is that the money saved through DOGE that he claims is waste, fraud, and abuse is being spent in other ways because of his malfeasance. And so by wanting to take a contract away from Verizon and give it to Starlink, the sheer cost of that is going to be into the billions. It is going to far outweigh any efficiency savings that DOGE might be making, despite the fact that they're all ideological savings. So I don't know. It's just, to me, it's so obviously a scam and a coup, and just, and then when Musk flutters his eyelashes and he's like, oh, I don't know why they hate me.
Why do they hate me?
Yeah.
Well, 3 weeks ago, he was saying that he found $2 trillion of Social Security fraudulent payments that have been going out.
Yeah.
Now, whatever happened to that? Whatever. Now it's all of a sudden he's now saying, well, we're purging Social Security numbers. Okay. Well, yeah. So what he figured out is that, there's a lot of dead people where we still have Social Security numbers out there for them who have died that we need to kind of purge the system, but none of them were getting any money.
Correct.
And here's my question. If there's all this fraud, how come there hasn't been one person indicted or arrested for the fraud that he's found?
Yeah.
Not one. Fraud is a crime.
Right.
Not one person has been charged with a crime. It's not fraud.
It's so the thing
like
is,
you
it's
said, it's
so
just
blatant.
spending that they don't agree with. It's not fraud.
Yeah.
It's sort of like judicial coup. They invent all these slogans.
Right.
Judicial coup is when a judge rules against Trump.
What about lawfare?
Fraud.
Do you like lawfare?
Fraud used to be stealing. Now it's just the government spending money on things I don't agree with.
Yeah, I know. Okay, listen, we have to take a quick break, but I want to come back and talk about, I mean, there's so much more to do, but I want to talk about this Republican strategy of not criticizing Donald Trump by name, which is going to get them somewhat closer to their goal, whatever that may be. We'll do that next here on Uncovered. Protect your family by securing their future with life insurance from Policy Genius. Policy Genius makes finding and buying life insurance simple and ensures your loved ones have a financial safety net they can use to cover debts and routine expenses, or even invest that money to earn interest over time. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Compare quotes from America's top insurers side by side for free with no hidden fees. Their licensed support team helps you get what you need fast so you can get on with your life. They answer questions, handle paperwork, and advocate for you throughout the process. Life insurance is a form of financial planning, and Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. Join thousands of happy Policy Genius customers who left 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. Secure your family's tomorrow so you can have peace of mind today. Head to policygenius.com/uncovered or click the link in the description below to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/uncovered. The secret weapon is a great asset to have in your back pocket. It helps you get ahead in life. And that's how Mack Weldon thinks about clothing, as a secret weapon, timeless classic style that's infused with performance fabrics and hidden details. Whether you're looking for light as air underwear, anti-odor tees, or sweaters with lightweight warmth, Mack Weldon has a full range of clothes that feel comfortable all day long and never go out of style. I love these black tees that I wear from Mack Weldon. They're comfortable, they allow me to breathe without getting hot and sweaty despite my environment. Some people want to look good without calling attention to themselves. Well, Mack Weldon apparel gives you understated looks for understated confidence. They're not flashy, just classic, always in style, and made from the world's most comfortable performance materials. Mack Weldon clothes are designed to fit your style and demands of modern life. They look like regular clothes, but they feel like the latest in modern comfort. Get timeless looks with modern comfort from Mack Weldon. Go to mackweldon.com and get 25% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code UNCOVERED. That's MACKWELDON.com. Promo code UNCOVERED. And you can find links to our sponsors in the description below. Okay, Ron, let's get back to the pack. And what is this story about the, Trump defying court orders, and then Chief Justice John Roberts making a statement, and then Trump claiming that, well, he didn't mention my name, so it doesn't have anything to do with me. I mean, there is a bigger story wrapped up in this, isn't there?
Yeah. This is something I noticed about a year ago. And I always, of course, I cover the Republican Party. I follow every Republican member of Congress. So I pay attention to what they say. And I know that on certain different areas, they disagree with Trump on one particular issue, let's say. So I'm very familiar with most of these Republican members of Congress and the things that they care about, the things they don't care about, et cetera. Like, for example, there's probably 40 members of the Republicans in the House that are extremely militantly pro-Ukraine, right? So I know who they are, and I know that these people disagree with Trump. So when Trump does something crazy on Ukraine, usually I'll check them to see if they have anything to say about that. And the pattern I've noticed over the last year, whether it's that or any other issue, tariffs is another one. The vast majority of Republicans in Congress are mortified by the tariff stuff, right?
And the rest of the world as well.
There's a lot of things that they disagree with Trump. But the question, the interesting thing for me is, how will they deal with what he's doing that they know is wrong and they disagree with?
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting anthropological study. And what I've noticed that someone's figured out, I think maybe it was Lindsey Graham or somebody has figured out, and this apparently works, is that they can criticize a position that he has taken as long as they don't mention his name. So, and the Fox hosts have now figured this out too. And I have noticed this pattern now where you know, Trump will say something or do something, and then they will post something on social media that says, well, we should be doing this, not that. And they'll criticize explicitly what Trump just did or said, but they will never mention Trump. They will never say the word Trump will not be in there. So they will say, we should not be imposing tariffs on Canada. We shouldn't be speaking like this. But they will never say like Trump should not be doing this. They will never use
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of how Trump would only read security briefings if they had his name in them. During the last administration. Do you remember? They would have to pepper these kind of bullet points with Trump's name just to keep his interest. And it reminds me of that in a way, like in a reverse fashion, whereby if they don't mention Trump, then there's a chance he's not going to notice.
Yeah. If they do mention him, of course, that he attacks them and goes after them and goes crazy, right? He does this all. He attacked Fox reporter Jackie Heinrich today. And she's like, she's their chief White House correspondent. He blasted her today just because she was critical of the Tesla selling the Teslas at the White House.
Yes.
So he was mad about that. So the point is that you can't, if you step out of line by mentioning his name, he will go after you guns blazing.
It becomes official.
But I noticed, like, now I've been, now that I am aware of this, I notice, and I taunt these guys constantly. So people might get annoyed with me on social media because I reply to these guys all the time, like, who did, like, you know, who did that?
Yeah.
Who's doing this thing you disagree with? Who is this person who is saying these terrible things? And why won't you say his name? Tell us his name. So I taunt these guys all the time, like, say his name. I dare you to say his name. Say Trump's name. And they won't do it. And so I've noticed, though, that they get away with being able to criticize him as long as they don't mention his name. So then when Roberts, I mean, Trump put out the Truth Social post trashing the Supreme Court and trashing the federal judges, saying we need to impeach these judges, right? These rogue judges.
That's right.
And Roberts took the extremely unusual step of 1 hour after Trump made that post on Truth Social, Roberts issued a statement saying impeachment of judges because you don't agree with their decisions is not appropriate. The appropriate remedy in the United States, if that happens for the last 200 years, is you appeal that judge's decision if you don't agree with it. That's how our system works. Highly unusual. And yes, Roberts, of course, followed the Republican playbook, never mentioned Trump's name, although he was just happening to be addressing Trump, something Trump posted 1 hour before. So a Fox reporter says, well, what did you think about Roberts criticizing what you said about judges? And he said, oh, he wasn't criticizing me. He never mentioned my name. And that confirmed my theory.
Your theory.
That as long as you don't mention his name, you can get away with it.
This is the level that we're dealing with, Ron. We should remind ourselves that this is the president of the United States who only responds to his name literally like a dog in a park. Let's take a look.
Because we're gonna first hit the other big news of the day, which was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court issued what a rare statement about your suggestion on Truth that you posted earlier today that Judge James Boasberg should be impeached after he ordered those deportation flights to El Salvador halted, essentially turned around. The Chief Justice said it was more than two centuries. We understood that essentially impeachment was for very rare circumstances and not an appropriate response to rulings you disagree with. What's your reaction to the court's stepping in to make a statement here? They didn't make a statement when Joe Biden, decided to forgive all those student loans.
Well, he didn't mention my name in the statement. I just saw it quickly. He didn't mention my name,
Yeah.
but many people have called for his impeachment, the impeachment of this judge. I don't know who the judge is, but he's radical left. He was Obama appointed.
But I don't know who he is, but I know that he was Obama appointed. He was actually appointed by George W. Bush, I think, and he was elevated by Barack Obama. But this is Trump typical, I've never heard of him. I don't know anything about it. But there's some quite good stuff in Project 2025. I mean, it's the inconsistency, and it's the fact that he just thinks everyone is as dumb as he is.
Honestly, like, I could take almost any 30-second Trump clip that you want to find, and I could talk about it for like 2 hours. You know, I mean, because there's so much there.
Yeah,
There's so much there. I mean, the theory about Roberts, but you know, first of all, he mentions the Biden student loan thing. Biden did not defy the judge. The judge ruled that his student loan thing was unconstitutional. He didn't have, and it was reworked. It was redone. It was completely redone and done a different way that complied with the way that the court said it needed to be done. So that's what happened. So the fact that Biden was able to then take, okay, the judge said you can't do it this way, you have to do it this way, and then the Biden administration said, all right, we fix it, and now it's done the right way, the way that the judge wants, and we put it back out. That's what happened. So with the way what the Republicans are trying to suggest, and Trump is that Biden defied court orders because they're setting up the day that they are going to defy court orders, which is coming. I mean, they've already seen a little sneak preview.
It's already been and gone.
Already
happening. It makes me crazy. This
more
the ignoring of this.
It's going to happen more blatantly, and so they're going to try and justify that by saying that using this Biden defied the court on student loans, which he did not. So that's another part of it too. You know, there was a couple other things he said in there that I forgot, but I
have the posting that Elon Musk put up, that, you know, about the judicial coup. We need 60 senators to impeach the judges and restore the rule of the people. I mean, why is Musk getting in on this as well? I mean, isn't this beyond his jurisdiction as a car salesman?
Well, I mean, you know, the reason why Musk is doing it is because Musk is a shock. Musk's role is to rally the grassroots. I mean, he wants to mobilize the online army, because every time a judge rules against Trump, no matter who the judge is, they immediately go after the judge. They start posting pictures of him. They start posting their home addresses. They start digging into their family members, as they've done with this judge. They start posting things about the judge's children, the judge's spouse. You know, this is what they do. And Lovely. Musk is the ringleader of that.
Yeah.
When all these little wingnuts post all this stuff about the judges' families, Musk is the one, you know, they don't have that many followers, but Musk is the one who retweets them and blasts out this stuff to 200 million people. So that's what Musk is doing here. He's mobilizing the online army to go after judges. This is all about intimidation. It's not even about this judge, and it's not even about this ruling. It's about future cases. It's about trying to intimidate judges by letting them know, if you rule against us, we're coming after you. We're coming after your family. And I hate to say this, but I believe that there is going to be a physical attack on a federal judge, either his house, his car, his office, or her. I believe that is going to happen this year. I hope it doesn't. I'm not trying to like wish it into existence, but just in monitoring the level of vitriol and venom, I'm getting the same vibes as I did leading up to January 6th. When I monitored all these people leading up to January 6th in December 2020 is why I knew it was going to be violent, because I listened to what they said, and they said what they were going to do ahead of time. And I'm getting the same vibe here with respect to federal judges and their families.
Stephen Miller is very much at the heart of a lot of this rhetoric too. Let's take a look at his position on this.
Is it the administration's understanding that he would comply with the verbal order?
Well, again, the whole thing is just preposterous. So, as the Department of Justice has said in writing, nothing that the administration did conflicted with the court order. But there's a bigger issue here, which is the court order is patently unlawful. And if we got into a place in this country where district court judges could, for example, help is the wrong word, could interfere and direct specific targeting or non-targeting in, say, Houthi-controlled territory, could direct which general on the battlefield is going to be in charge of making which decisions, could direct, for example, we can send this military asset to this country, but not this country. Could direct what intelligence we could share with Israel versus with Saudi Arabia. If a district court judge can be involved in the conduct of our foreign policy, under no definition do we have a democracy in this country.
I mean, Nosferatu brings a whole bunch of, again, we could talk for 2 hours about that clip also. The thing that I get from this is that they are working towards, as you say, a point at which, and this will be way beyond a constitutional crisis, where Trump sees himself as the chief law enforcer, and to him, the judiciary is just an unnecessary evil.
Yeah, that's exactly it. They're laying the groundwork for defying court orders. And that's what Stephen Miller is doing. And nobody's talking about doing what Stephen Miller is talking about. No federal judge is saying you can't send aid to Israel. What we're talking about is agencies that were set up by Congress, passed by an act of Congress, signed into law, that have been in existence for decades, that a person in the executive branch shuts down and closes that agency that was created by Congress. That's what we're talking about. There's no district judge saying you can't send F-35s to Israel. That is not happening. So that's what they do. They take some crazy example and they say that this is what's going on. No, that's not what's happening. But here what they are doing is, across the board, it's Republicans and many Republicans, not all, but many Republicans in Congress, in the media, Trump administration, Musk has done this constantly, is to say that judges, because Musk absolutely doesn't understand, as you just saw from that tweet, he said it takes 60 votes to convict on an impeachment when it takes 67. So he doesn't know basic civics of this country. So what they're saying is judges have no judicial review. They have no authority to interpret statutes, interpret the Constitution, and to determine whether they are legal or not, which is like how this country has worked since 1803, since the Marbury versus Madison decision, creating judicial review. So ever since then, that's how the framework of this country has worked. So the question is this: if the courts have no authority to decide whether something violates the Constitution or violates a law passed by Congress, if judges don't have that authority, who does? Because that's what they're saying. What they're saying is Donald Trump should decide whether something is lawful or constitutional or not. It is Donald Trump that has the sole authority to decide whether something is legal or not the federal judiciary. That's what they believe, and that's the road that they're taking us down.
But this is authoritarianism 101, isn't it?
Yep.
And so we need to, I've said this before in the show, and I hate to repeat myself, but we have to keep reminding people that all of these activities are out of the playbook of the dictator and authoritarianism. And we've seen it in other countries before. We had this in Italy with Berlusconi, but we also probably had it with Mussolini as well. So, there is a through line with these types of people. And how does someone go from being a reality TV show host to suddenly becoming the dictator of the largest economy in the world? Like this, like we are witnessing this now. Historians will look back on this period and talk about how American democracy fell. And even Fox News, because I'm going to play this clip of Laura Ingraham asking Trump basically flat out, would you defy a court order? Just listen to the way that Trump gaslights. He uses, this weird kind of syntax so that he never really has to answer the question. But, he can't really be held on it, but it's very clear as to what his view really is. Let's take a look.
On the election, ruling on the election.
But going forward,
I had judges
would you
that were
defy
so
a court
corrupt.
order? Because we all know that was outrageous.
I never did defy a court order.
And you wouldn't in the future?
No, you can't do that. However, we have bad judges. We have very bad judges, and these are judges that shouldn't be allowed. I think at a certain point you have to start looking at what do you do when you have a rogue judge. The judge that we're talking about, you look at his other rulings. Rulings unrelated, but having to do with me, he's a lunatic.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, I wouldn't mind if he was a fringe politician, but this is the president, Ron.
He's violated court orders hundreds of times.
Yeah.
He was found in contempt of court and fined for violating court orders last year. Okay. So he has nothing but contempt for the judiciary and for court orders. He violates them regularly. But then, after saying that, he says, well, we're going to have to look at how do we deal with these rogue judges? Well, the Constitution says if the judge is violating his oath, he's to be impeached. That's how you deal with it. So what exactly is he suggesting there when he says they know that they can never impeach a judge? It's not going to happen because they need 67 votes in the Senate, and you're not going to get all those Democrats to vote to impeach a federal judge. It's not going to happen. Even many of the Republicans will not do it. So when he says, well, we're going to have to look at what we can do about these rogue judges, what is he talking about there exactly? He's sending a signal to his mob. Hey, we need to do something about these rogue judges, guys. It's January 6th all over again. I'm telling you, it's the same.
Yeah, you got to fight like hell, Ron.
Stop the steal. Stop the steal. We got to fight like hell, or we won't have a country anymore. It's the same playbook. And this is what's happening. And by the way, can we talk about Chuck Schumer in the context of this statement? Because Schumer canceled his book tour, which was supposed to happen on Monday because he knew he was going to face angry Democrats, and he doesn't want to face angry Democrats. So he canceled his book tour. But one of the things so instead he substituted that for a media tour. He went on like 20 different shows in the last 2 days, trying to explain why he did what he did. And one of the things he said in one of those interviews was on this issue, which is he says that his strategy is that he thinks that Trump is just going to keep doing crazier and crazier stuff. And he has faith that Republicans in the Senate are going to get to a point where they've had enough, and they're going to stand up to Trump, and they're going to say no more. And he believes that the tipping point, the breaking point for many Republican senators is going to be when Trump defies a court order.
Yeah.
He believes that is going to be the straw that's going to break that's going to open up the dike, right? That's going to all of a sudden Republicans in the Senate are going to grow a spine and stand up to Trump as soon as, and that's Schumer's strategy. He thinks that that's the way he's going to defeat Trump. And it's like, I heard that and I'm like, wow, we're in more trouble than I thought.
Yeah. Big trouble. I mean, there is now a petition to have him step down, which is gaining some traction. I'll play the clip of him on CBS where he claims that he's the best leader for the Senate because he's the best at winning Senate seats. Let's take a look.
People in your own party, they're saying, look, it's time for you to go. They no longer trust your leadership. They want somebody else in there. What do you say about that?
Here's what I say.
In your own party saying you've got to go.
Here's what I'm saying. I'm the best leader for the Senate. We have a lot of leaders. When you don't have a president, there's not one leader of the party. There are lots of them. We have a lot of good people. But I am the best at keep winning Senate seats. I've done it in 2005. Just in 2020, no one thought we'd take back the Senate. Under my leadership, we took it. So we now are executing.
You're not going anywhere.
We're moving forward. Hakeem and I have a plan. Let me just say this. There's a real contrast between the parties. The Republican Party now, particularly in office, is the party of rich oligarchs who want to really screw every average American so they can get tax cuts for the rich. And we are fighting that every day. So today, we just issued a statement at 8 o'clock that describes it. Hakeem and I, we have a day of action on Medicaid. In every state, in every corner of the country, Democrats are talking about they're going to Medicaid centers. They're going to people who would be deprived.
Kill me now. I can't take any more of that, Ron.
I have
he
my
is.
arms folded here, man.
I know. I know.
I couldn't help but fold my arms.
I know. Exactly. Everything was clenched. I also want to play the clip of where they forced Chuck Schumer to watch clips of his colleagues criticizing him. Let's take a look.
Look, Chuck and I disagreed as it relates to the approach and outcome.
I think there is a deep sense of outrage and betrayal. And this is not just about progressive Democrats. This is across the board, the entire party.
I still support Senator Schumer as leader, but I think the only way that we are going to be effective as a caucus is if we change our tactics.
I would have liked to see, when Chuck Schumer had leverage here, to say we need A, B, C, and D for the Democratic Party, and force the Republicans to meet him halfway on those issues.
I myself don't give away anything for nothing. And I think that's what happened the other day.
They said, okay, he said leverage, I think it was the governor.
And Nancy Pelosi said, I myself don't give away anything for nothing. I think that's what happened.
The only
other
leverage we had, they weren't going to negotiate with us. So there were two choices only. It would be nice if we had a third choice. We tried to get that third choice with the 30-day extension that Patty Murray tried to get some more moderate Republicans on the Appropriations Committee go along. They wouldn't. So we were faced only the Senate, not the House. They had a little easier because they could vote no against the CR and not cause a shutdown. Right. But in the Senate, the only two choices were these choices. Period.
I mean, the problem, Ron, is that he is institutionalized, isn't he? I mean, he's been in the Senate for so long that he only really speaks the language of the Senate. And what those of us on the outside are doing is saying, shut it down, shut it all down, because that is the protest. I mean, I was looking at French women in France who were protesting fascism there, and they were all out with no tops on, with their boobs out, with writing all over, marching and protesting. And I was thinking, wow, can you imagine the Americans protesting fascism in that way? You know, the Europeans take the threat of fascism far more seriously, clearly, than the Americans do.
I appreciate those kind of protests too. I mean, I like those protests better than setting the cars on fire. But no, here's the problem. I think, there's two big problems with Schumer, and you put your finger on it too. Totally. Look, the guy's from New York City. He goes between New York City and DC for his whole life. I mean, has he ever been to Arkansas? Has he ever been to Alabama, Texas? He has no connection with the rest of the country. He is a New York City, DC guy. And that's fine if you get out into the country and spend some time, traveling around, campaigning for other people in different districts. But Schumer doesn't do that stuff. I mean, he might show up and do like an interview or something, but that's not real.
There's too much privilege there, isn't there?
He's out of touch with the average person in this country. And look, there's two things. And to me, what shows it is the stress. And he's stuck in a time warp. This is not an age thing because Bernie gets it.
Yeah.
Okay. Chuck doesn't get it. Bernie's older than Chuck. So it's not just an age thing, but that's part of it. There's two things that bug me about Schumer. And the first part of it, I'll lump in Jeffries because this applies to him too, which is they view the way to deal with Trump is to focus on government workers losing their jobs and people losing government benefits. Okay, fine. But that's only part of the problem, okay? That's only one piece. Like, the Democratic Party can't just be the party of defending federal workers and government benefits. It's got to be about more than that. Those things are important, yes, but that's all I hear them talk about every single day. They're going to take away your Social Security. Yeah. They're going to take,
it's not enough.
If that stuff happens, then okay, that's going to ignite a percentage of the population that relies on those benefits, but it hasn't happened yet. So when you keep saying they're coming for your Social Security, look, Democrats have been saying that since 1975.
Talk about the stuff that's actually happening now.
Happens.
Talk about
it's not resonating with people.
Talk about the legal residents being deported.
we're getting hurt with young voters.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump got a larger percentage of voters under 30 than any Republican has in gajillion number of years.
Yeah.
And the reason is because Democratic messaging focuses on the Republicans are going to take away your benefits. That doesn't resonate with people under 30 because largely they aren't getting government benefits. They might have student loans, okay, but they're not relying on Medicaid. They're not relying on Social Security. So that message doesn't appeal to them, okay? And so it's a message that appeals primarily to like seniors, but there's more people in the country than that. So that's one part of it. They have this DC mentality that all of their messaging revolves around government service and government benefits when there's a hell of a lot more happening that Trump is doing to this country besides just that. That's number one. And number two was something Chris Murphy said this week, which I thought was really, really poignant, which is, we have this playbook in the Democratic Party where we raise gobs of money, and then every 2 years we piss that money away on 30-second TV ads when the vast majority of this country doesn't even watch TV anymore. You're not even reaching them with these ads, and we just throw it away, whereas the Republican Party does some of that, but not nearly as much as Democrats. But they also have invested in a communications infrastructure of different ways to reach voters, and it's there permanently. These are investments that are made into different media platforms that exist from one election to the other. They don't. So take a look at Kamala Harris. What did she spend? $2 billion. It's all gone. So what do we have left over from the Harris campaign and that $2 billion that we can still use right now today? Nothing. It's all gone. We spent it all. The Republicans have a permanent infrastructure that they invest with that campaigns 365 days a year. Every single year, they don't stop. And Democrats gear up every 2 years for 6 months.
And then they
all their money on
spend
TV
it and break
ads,
it down
and
again.
that's it.
Yeah.
And that's what Murphy talked about. And Schumer absolutely doesn't understand that. And that's another big problem I have.
It's very frustrating. I don't know that he has the self-awareness to take the hint that it's time to step aside. I'm hoping that it's Hakeem Jeffries that kind of pushes him to that, because I think Jeffries does have a radar. Remember, he was asked at a press conference the other day, should Schumer step down? And he just goes, next question. And that was a clue to me that this is obviously something that's on his mind. What I would be interested to see is who would replace Schumer, and then they would fire Jeffries, because there does need to be a significant shift. And, we discussed Mark Kelly last week. I'm down for him and AOC as a unit. I would love to see that as a new movement for the young Democrat. And Mark Kelly's an old white guy, but he just gets it.
Bernie Sanders just launched a tour of the country with AOC. They're going out together. I mean, I saw that. I was very excited. I thought, what? That's just such a great combination of people. To hit Bernie and AOC hitting the road together. I mean, that's what we need to start doing, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? I follow every Democrat in Congress. I follow their social media account. There's literally like 100 Democrats in Congress who never post anything at all on social media. Nothing at all. And they never have done a podcast. They just don't do any of that stuff. They do no alternative media. They're stuck in this, like, I'll just do the local TV stations in my district, couple interviews, I'll do some PBS stuff, and I'm good. They might have a staffer that they have who puts out some garbage, talking point every now and then. But literally, there's like 100 Democrats in Congress who post nothing on social media themselves and who never do podcast interviews. This is the problem. Republicans do all that stuff. We don't.
And I mean, it's a good time to remind people that Midas Touch is, the largest independent media network in the country.
You know what? That's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
But you know what? After Midas Touch got a huge audience, now we got all these congressmen who want to do the Midas Touch podcast.
Yeah.
I have a problem with that. You know why? Because, okay, it's great that they're doing it, but they didn't do it last year. A lot of them, they didn't do it the year before. It's only because we have a huge audience and a lot of publicity about it that they now all want to do the Midas Touch podcast.
It was
what
lazy.
I would say to them is, what about all the other Democratic podcasts out there? Why aren't you doing the smaller ones and building them up? Trump did in 2021 and 2022. I watched Trump do hundreds of podcasts of right-wingers that had almost no audience, that had like 2,000 views on their podcast, and Trump was doing them and he was building up their audience. We don't do that.
I know. Do you know, I wish also that these Democratic Congress people would buy a microphone and some lights and have it set up in their office for doing podcasts. I mean, I interviewed Ro Khanna a couple of weeks ago. He was like on his iPhone, balanced on a book on a table. And I mean, it was just a disaster. And I was thinking, if you haven't yet realized that new media is not new anymore, that this is what you should have, a little studio set up. It's only $100 worth of gear. Have it on your desk, have it ready to go, slide in, do your interviews, go off, do your meetings, come in, do another quick interview. Because the time we wasted trying to balance his phone on a book. And I was thinking, you know, all of his assistants, like young people, they should know. Like, make it good. Like, go out of your way to prioritize this stuff.
When they, you know, I noticed that too. The few that do podcasts, like, you look at them and they don't take it seriously.
No.
When they go on MSNBC or they do a TV hit from their studio or their home, they're in a suit, they're in a tie, they're dressed up, they got the lighting, they're ready to go, right? Even when they're in their home. But then when they go do a podcast or a Democratic pod, they're in a t-shirt, they're wearing a hat, you know, their cat's running around. They disrespect the show, and they're showing that, oh, this is not that important.
Yeah,
I'll do this while I'm, you know, having a cheeseburger and playing with my cat, you know, and take it more seriously, because the right believes very strongly that is the best way to reach voters, especially young voters, is alternative media. And the Democrats do not feel that way, except for maybe a dozen of them in Congress.
Okay. I think we should end it there because, you know, that feels like the right place to stop. We could go on for another half an hour because we've got the material, but I feel like we've set out our stall now. Ron, thank you very much, as always. Thank you. We've had about 15,000 people watching this live broadcast, which is fantastic.
A lot of people mad at me, probably. Huh?
Well, that's okay. You know, we're all
they
a little
usually
bit
like
mad at
you and they hate on me, but that's all right.
It's okay. It's, you know, it's good cop, bad cop. It works for me. Don't forget to comment down below. Check out our sponsors down there as well. The audio podcast version of this show drops later tonight and does every Wednesday evening. And don't forget to check out all the other Midas Touch shows as well as Ron's daily blog that he writes at Midas News, which is an essential Substack that you need to subscribe to. I have a Substack as well. You can catch me on 5 Minute News. I'll be back on Sunday. Got a very special guest on the weekend show here on the Midas Touch Network as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Ron, I'll catch you next week. Thanks for now.
All right. See you next week.